Okay, so everybody, welcome to the Chapter 339 webinar with Mr. Chris Davis, Mr. Doug Brown. Today, we are recording this just so everybody who's on knows, and we'll be adding folks in as we go throughout the next hour. We have I know we're going to have a lot of questions because we have a lot of topics to get over. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. I'll read them off to everybody when there's time to interject here and there. And I'm going to turn us over, or actually I should say, I want to introduce, we have Mr. Chris Davis and Mr. Doug Brown. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris Davis from PDE to get things going.
So just to kind of talk about what 339 is, what happens with it, and why we use it, why it's important. 339 is our legislation that is guiding vocational education. And within that, there's a lot of different steps and different things that need to be met in order for the subsidies to come through. If you're working forward towards a Perkins, obviously Perkins comes into there as well. Most of our programs are not Perkins recipients, but we are the subsidy for daily average attendance. So those things need to be met in order to make sure that the contract essentially between your school district and trying to get students into the workforce is being met. Within 339, there's essentially two different parts of it. There's the CAT system, which I've seen almost everyone's name on here, at least email me once about it. And there is the on-site approval process. The CATS is the approval that is, again, online. It's asking for certain things to make sure that the program is meeting the needs of being community-based, having community support, making sure that's recognizing industry standards, safety, making sure that there is all students are being able to be represented and that they are able to get the supports that are needed as well. Along with that, following that, actually, I should say, is your on-site evaluation, where we do the same thing. We look at that same type of information that is in the CAT system, but then we also go a little bit farther with it, and we look at safety, we look at how the class is run, we look at how school's outlined, we look how everything kind of works together in it. And while one of the big things with this is, PDE is not trying to serve as a hammer in any way, shape, or form. We're trying to serve as a flashlight. And one of the things that I always go back to is that APE checklist and all the things in CATS really are best practices that are ways that we can be able to provide better opportunities for our students. With that, some of the things that we've been looking at and things that we hear a lot about lately over the past year now that are hot topics, we can say, are things like LAC versus OAC. It's that local advisory committee and why we need one of those, and we need an occupational advisory committee. With a local advisory committee, we're looking at that big picture of the area. We're looking at what things might be happening and how our programs can help support those industries. My great example is a warehouse is being built right along 78. And what do we need to build a warehouse? We need electricians, we need HVAC, we need people that can do concrete, we need people that can finish everything, painting, things like that. But then we also need, landscapers and horticulturalists to be able to do all the stuff, retention ponds around it, water management around it. And that LAC should be bringing in a lot of those different ideas and saying, this is a new opportunity. How can we start fitting this in? How can we get programs that we know that there's going to be jobs for? And then what would happen is they say, yeah, we need a landscaping program. They put in a landscaping program at one of the local schools, and they go ahead and say, yep, OAC now needs to be formed. So you get your industry representatives in there, and those industry representatives help guide that program as to what is important for that area. So there's a lot of things that go into that as well. And I know we can talk about those a little bit more in depth later, but it's really the differentiation between those two. One of the other big things that we're always looking at here is just making sure that there's proper supports and that there's proper use of equipment and safety. And that's a pretty straightforward. You guys all know what is safe, what is not safe. And then we come into the schools and try and help out with that. And as an ag teacher, I'm guilty of it as well. We like to save stuff. That's one of the big things we like to see. We always know there's a use for something. And so that's one of our big things that we see on visits is, it could just be a corner of the room that's cluttered, or, a doorway semi-blocked by an engine block that you guys, we're just working on, something like that. But that clutter is one of our biggest things that we've been seeing as well. Yeah, that's kind of an overview of 339. What do you guys want to know about it, and what do you guys want to learn from that? And if not, I can always just pass it right off to Doug and let Doug roll through his stuff as well.
I don't have anything in the chat right now, so if we want, we can shift over.
All right, Doug, I think it's all yours then.
All right. Well, welcome everybody and happy holidays and happy new year from Central Columbia and Central Columbia FFA and the Northern Tier here today. Most of us here in the Northern Tier didn't have schools, so we're kind of reeling here just a little bit, but working our way through it. But Bethany's going to bring up a PowerPoint that I did years ago with the new and beginning teachers, and we have in the repository, you guys are going to receive some items or directly through an email from her or myself that's going to have some items in there that deal with particularly the teacher side. So when we talked about doing this workshop for you guys, we talked about Chris kind of introducing the side of PDE and then coming back on the teacher side. Now, looking at the list of who's there, most of you guys have already been through this once or maybe twice or more. But Chris being new to the state would change a little bit of flavor to it versus Gene or versus Lee or whoever's going to come out and do the visits as it is. We know, and this is probably something that Chris doesn't probably want to hear, but from the teacher side, every observer is different, especially for you younger guys or folks that are on here today. Every observer is a little different. If you start talking, and I talked to Neil Fellenbaum, and Neil says, hey, by the way, I had Chris Davis on my visit. And I find out that I have Gene Kellner with my visit. I know I'm going to expect something different, right? Really shouldn't be, but it kind of is. From my experiences, that's kind of what I've experienced a little bit. And we've been through this 2 or 3 times before. We've been through it in our new facility, which was new just about 5 years ago. So we're ready to roll. Our next inspection is not this spring, but next spring. Due to COVID, everything's getting pushed back just a little bit. But I guess the aspect of it is, what do I have to do as a teacher to get ready? And I guess the biggest thing is, again, you guys are experienced to know this, but folks that aren't, you got to get the administration involved. There are just some things that you can't do all of it in this approval process, in the checklist. You cannot do it all. Your special education director, that person needs to get involved. I'm going to give you an example. I had a great special education director. She moved on, is now a superintendent down in the southeast part of the state, and moved on. And we now have a great special ed director. The only issue is she's never been through an evaluation, and she's coming from a school district that has no programs. So her idea of approved program, she has no clue. So the problem is I have to educate her this year. And the lucky thing is I know her very, very well. Small town USA, but she's never been through it. So there's a lot of requirements that she's going to have to do that she has no clue of. And that's what I'm working with her as we go. Of course, the guidance department's obviously a big player in it as well. So you got to get in guidance's back pocket a little bit and make sure that they're aware as well. And we have a new secretary who's never been through this before. And then that's an issue. So Bethany, if you want to go back a slide for a minute. So I guess from the biggest thing is you just got to be prepared. This is something you cannot do overnight. For the young folks that are on here, you can't think about, I'm going to start this about a month from now. And no, not going to happen. You got to start this a year ahead. Our visits are actually next spring, 2024, and we've already started preparing items for 2024. Be organized with it. That's for sure. Be transparent. Chris said that. PDE is there to help you. They don't want to go in there and slam the hammer down because, their job depends on it as well. If we're not out there, they're not out there. So that's kind of the big key. And I learned that years ago, that when I first went through this, I'm like, oh boy, they're here to really put the hammer on us and close this program and and that type of thing. And that's not what they're there for at all. They're there to assist you, to aid you, to give you some guidance, and in a constructive manner, but also may help you. And he touched on one of them, and I just wrote the note down. When it comes to safety, equipment, you want to use the leverage of PDE saying, hey, by the way, I think we need this. And I have fought for years to try to get this in our school, and I can't do it. But PD says we need it. All of a sudden, administration's like, yeah, okay, we'll get it, go get it. So use that as an advantage to you to go get equipment, guarding, make your facilities better, upgrade, maybe even a remodel. Who knows? So be transparent in it, that's for sure. Don't use smoke and mirrors, just be real honest with them. Be excited. That's a bigger thing. You're excited to show your program off to the folks in Harrisburg that make the call. So be excited about showing your program. And again, be excited about promoting your district and the program that you have. So those are kind of the general thoughts that we kind of go by at Central Columbia, and the ideas of when 339 comes around. And with all our programs, doesn't matter if it's medical sciences or accounting or engineering. A lot of you guys have a lot more programs than we have, much bigger schools, but you know, the idea of it is just be transparent, show your program. So you want to go to the next one there, Bethany, that'd be great. So the idea of it is, you know, you have the introduction, make sure you have the most current approved list of 2022, 23 list. You could get that off PD's website. Chris in the summer, if you were at the Ag Teachers Conference, he provided a bunch of links, and that's going to be in the repository as well, that he sent out to everybody and put it in the PAAE's conference folder in Google Drives to go down and get that. And that's going to want what you want to get. Just like if you would put a student into an LED or CTE, you want to look at the rubric first and then get them prepared. Same deal. It's basically your rubric to get your evaluation through your program. So keep that in mind as you go. You know, the other thing is PAE TEP, the evaluation that each of us go through. Career technical education plays a major role in that now. You know, the individual scores of the teacher is part of it, but program approvals and program scoring on NOCTI and things of those sorts play a huge role in the SSP. And all of a sudden, oh wow, your NOCTI scores actually mean something, and that's important too. So at Central Columbia, we're a career pathway school. There's only a few of us out there, but that's our driver, and it makes what we are, and it fits in very well with the PAE TEP and the SSP scores and those evaluation packets and that checklist. So kind of gives you, you know, those ideas as we go. Chris, you want to say anything about that scorecard at this point, the approval program evaluation?
A big part of it when it comes down for your school overall school score. And that's why when we see programs, one of the hardest things we see with this, and I'll try and provide examples as we go through, but when you have a student starting into a program and then they leave the program to go to the Career and Tech Center, which we know that's a big difficult thing that we have, especially in ag education, that does affect those scores in the long run. And yeah, the NOCTI scores do count in that. It's not heavily weighted in there, but it is a counting thing. We just want to make sure that the kids are taking those end of a course assessments after they reach that 480. So yeah, that score is definitely something that comes into play. And if you guys have been on the new CAT system and the FRCPP portal, all that information is going into that. So it's not just your CAT stuff or your approval stuff. It's also everything else that goes into there. So
I have a few questions in the chat. Do you want me to hold them, or do you want me to interject them as we go?
Now, I was just looking to see exactly who's on here. We have a couple of teachers that are actually CATs and PIMS coordinators for their district. And we have some younger people on here. So let's go back, because both these are basically, these are going to be Chris Davis questions here. So looks like the first one, just one question that Jared had over at Mifflinburg for the on-site visit. Do we still need the physical binders?
So no, for those of you who've been doing this for a while, you know that you guys had those 3-inch binders filled with everything. Those are out of there now. And what they've been doing is they've been setting up Google files. The year prior to your evaluation, around February, a letter will come out to your administration, as will access to your Google database, essentially. And then you can start putting everything directly in there electronically. A lot of the information, we've had a couple schools say, well, we still have stuff we have to scan in. And that's, yeah, we understand that there might be a few things that need scanned in, but the reality of it is it really shouldn't be that much, considering a lot of the stuff is looking at the last year or the last 2 years of information there. So no more binders unless you guys want to. We accept pretty much anything that you guys give us, but if you don't want to do it, or if you do want to do it, we're happy to accommodate with that. But we are using the Google files. I know there's been a couple other talks right now. There's a program, I believe, coming out of Susquehanna IU that was trying to kind of compile this information into a whole nother format. CTE 360 was another one. If your school is investing into that, that was another way some schools are doing it. As long as we have access to it, that is all we need to know. And in our time that we've had, the only issues that we've ever had was if we went to a school and they didn't already share the files with us from the Google. So they uploaded them, but they didn't include our emails as shareable. So we sat there for an hour and a half in the morning clicking request access on every single document, which isn't fun for the teachers. It's not fun for anybody. So just a heads up there with that.
Yeah, before we go to the next question, one of the things that Chris just brought up was that visit, but one of the things that we've been doing the last 2 evaluations, and if you really want to have an idea, and I guess the reason that we did it, the last evaluation, and we're gonna be doing it for this one as well, because of our new facility, we did actually a pre-visit with Gene and Lee to our place in October of this year that we're getting evaluated in the springtime. So we called it a pre-meeting in October. They came on site. We didn't hide anything. We just did what we normally do. And I wanted them to go through mainly facilities because we were new at that point, and just say, yep, this is good. No, this isn't good. And as well as the paperwork, and that was still during the binder era. But it was actually great if you can get your administrators to buy into a pre-visit. And if you can get PDE there to do that, that'd be really good. We've also gone to PDE with some of our stuff, and our administrators have sat with Gene actually, and gone through, hey, here's what we have. Is this okay or that not okay? And then it gives you 6 to 8 months to try to reel it in or no, make those adjustments or whatever. So it just makes the visit a lot easier for everybody involved versus Chris sitting there for an hour and a half going through, the buttons and trying to click all that stuff. So it's one of those processes that you go through. So, yeah. So
and that's something I'm happy to help any of you with. Right now, it's obviously crazy because of cats, but I'm more than happy to do that for any of you. If you want me to look at that stuff, a year beforehand, let's not go 2 years or 3 years out beforehand, but year before you guys have your evaluation, I'm happy to do that. And I can swing by and do an hour or 2, help you guys just kind of see what I'm seeing and get you guys going where you'd like to go.
Good. So that should answer Jared's question. Jeremy's got a question there. PDE still accepting other academic classes to count as hours that will the student meet their ag, environmental science, occupational objective. So, that's one that's been ongoing. That goes way back to 2007, long before Chris Davis. That lead dog at that point in time was Kurt Turner, president of PWE at the time. We fought that fight. This is going to be driven from the AVTSs and the VOTEC schools in the state versus the comprehensive high schools. So we're going to pass that buck back over to Chris again and have him, as he's smiling there, kind of answer that question for us. So
yeah, this is always a hot topic, and especially with the ag programs trying to meet their hours. The recommendation came out 5 years ago about moving more towards technical courses. That recommendation is still standing. This conversation has come back up just recently this week. So we're waiting on more clarification as it comes from legal and it comes from everyone else higher up. So Jeremy, I know me and you have had a couple back and forth on this one prior. We'll see where it goes with this, and I'll make sure I get in touch with you and let you know where it's headed. So I'm waiting for some responses back as well.
what are we looking at, Chris, for those responses? Are we looking at the beginning of the year or
no? I'm hoping by early next week is what I'm looking at. So I try to make sure as soon as things come out, we get them answered as much as possible.
And you're gonna be able to push that out to everybody, right?
Yep. Yep.
Chris, real quick though, with the new, we are trying to get approved this year, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and so I just didn't know if that would affect our approval right now with the academic courses counting. So that's
So
why.
as far as my understanding right now with things for like this year, because of the rollout and the craziness of cats with it, we want to get everyone as close to approved as possible. And obviously there's new dates always are rolling out here. And there's one that was announced today at PACTA for January 20th, rather than the December 30th. Please don't hold off on putting things in, but that was put out there today. So what the discussion is that as long as you're working with us, we're going to try and get you across that finish line as best as we can. Even if that means that you're reaching a conditional status, that is not pulling approval. That's not doing anything. That just means, hey, we need to see something else. And that's it. So that's been a discussion again. I'm hoping that comes in more clarification with that, with the next, along with the same question that I put out. So. But yes, Jeremy, it should not affect you. And if it is going to, I will be in contact and we'll try and work you through it as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no
Chris,
worries.
one of the questions that I got earlier in the week was, and you're gonna have to be the guy to answer this question. I know you go out and do observations, but can you tell us from the office, who are the observers and evaluators that are coming out from PDE?
So usually if it is a single program school or a small program school, in terms of numbers, you'll get one person from PDE. That'll either be Jean, myself, Raina, who is our construction trades person, Lisa Golding, who is our FCS person, or Mindy, or we just got two more people on there, Messina Worley or Nadine Stanley. So they are people that have the backing with career and tech education with it. They might not be 100% familiar with the ag programs, but you are right when you said, Doug, that they do sometimes see certain things differently. And I don't look at that as a negative thing as much as I think it's a good thing that we're getting outside people in to see what the ag programs are doing, taking that good stuff out there and then bringing in some other ideas on, well, this might be able to be done differently. And we know, again, just like we clutter stuff, we also live in our own ag silo. And it's not bad to have some of those outside observations as well. Some of them you may disagree with, and I completely understand some of that. But they're doing it for, again, the same reasons we all are, is trying to make the best opportunities for students.
Yeah, and
So,
some of that can be a learning curve on their part too. So it's, again, it goes back, it's a great opportunity for the teacher. And I know we all struggle with that, because the stress load that we go through for the days that we're in there anyways is high. But use it as a positive to teach that person that may not be an ag person about ag education, you know?
Yep.
That's one of those things, so.
No, you're 100% with that. And then if you have bigger programs, if you are at a CTC or you have usually more than 3 programs at your school, they'll bring in a team. The PDE person will be the lead for that team. And then the volunteers come in, and the volunteers we get from all different areas. A lot of them are retired directors from CTC centers or retired teachers. I was fortunate enough just to have a couple retired teachers from some schools up in the Northeast that were really good at doing what they were doing, but they bring in those other aspects as well. And they do bring in there are things that have worked for them. And the great thing about that is usually that if you have a young teacher, it's really nice to have those old teachers in there with them, or retired teachers, excuse me, not old teachers, but retired teachers, because it helps them be able to say, hey, I was in your boot or your shoes. I know exactly what you're going through. Try this, this, and this. So not that PD doesn't do that, but it definitely is taken differently from them.
So I have a question that Mr. Hojanowski sent me, and I'm gonna let him ask it directly because it's kind of lengthy, if that's okay. And I'll go ahead.
So, of course, we're looking at the academic course thing again. So chemistry is not a requirement for graduation. Neither is AP biology, neither is AP environmental science. So we want to count them toward technical courses for environmental science, agriculture. So there's a reason why those things are being excluded from being counted. One, and maybe AP in environmental and biology is not, but then when you have someone outside the area teaching it, there's a reason that is so in terms of being certified ag teachers.
Oh, Tom, I got your email earlier today and I've been meaning to get back to it. Yeah, there is a couple things with this, and this is all part of the question that's going up to the higher levels. One of the reasons that it might not be included for that AP bio environmental chemistries, depending on teacher certification, depending if it's crosswalked in the program. Mainly when we look at that, we see the certification question. But again, this is something that's been elevated from me to another level, and I'm waiting for some clarification on that as well. So I'm hoping we have some better news or some better things for you then, Tom, and we can get that figured out.
Okay. And then you said 480, is that a time requirement you were referring to?
Yep, so the 480 is the hours to reach concentrator status. When a student reaches that concentrator status, they are to then have to sit for the NOCTI, essentially.
Does that matter how many hours your program is considered?
Now, once they reach 480, and this is a lane I've been told I need to make sure I stay in, is looking at the new graduation pathways that have come out. There's some options that come through with that 480 and that sitting for a NOCTI become very important.
But that makes actually sense for me, at least. Like I said, with a 4-year program, I have these people that are in their 4th year that when they're under the old rules or guidelines we had, they meet 480 for sure. They just won't meet 720.
Yeah, and for a 4-year program, looking at 1320 for a lot of high schools is extremely hard to do. There's very few high schools that are able to actually form their schedules around making it happen like that. And one of the ways that we do say that helps the ag programs reach those hours is having the SAE. And a lot of schools have been doing things with SAE outside of the school day, putting in as a 10th period or 5th period that the teacher is still able to evaluate their stuff while in class, looking at it and making sure they're journaling and they're putting everything in, but they're able to count those hours as well. And that kind of helps with that in the long run.
Okay.
So, and yes, Gene is still with PDE.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, so we might as well stay with the question just for a minute.
Nope,
Joe's
it's
got
fine.
one here. On the audit itself, because of COVID, this was a good question. And I think I don't have access to that. So what is the schedule then, Chris, for schools, and how do they find out when their schedule actually is? You went over this.
Judy, you can, I will email you probably tomorrow morning with your next one. And what it is it's essentially 6 years from your last visit. For that 1 year of the major COVID stuff, it's pushed everything back 1 year. So if you take your last visit, add 6, that's when you'll be. But I'll make sure for you, Jody. And is there a chart? There's not a chart. The earliest that PDE will inform you, other than you reaching out to me, would be usually that February the year before. So then you're starting to know what you're looking for.
Yep.
Mike, 480, a new thing with and while I know a lot of you guys aren't receiving Perkins funds with Perkins 5, yes, the 480 became the number for it. So that's something to think about, and I can try and get the legislation stuff or the information behind that and get that sent to you guys as well. Because that's underneath our data reporting division, so I can get that though.
Yeah, so Chris, do you want to explain that just a little bit? Because, Tom brought up the 1320, and that's what we lived with for years. So the 480, it was an adjustment, correct?
Yeah, so and it used to be 50%, like Mike is saying there. And what has happened now is it has gone to 480, and after that they're considered concentrator. And once they reach this concentrator status, that's when they need to sit for the NOCTI.
So I guess the other question is, can you define from your office what's a concentrator versus a completer?
So a completer would be doing, this is where we get into some interesting gray area. A completer is essentially someone that completes all the hours. However, they are considered a completer if they reach 480 and take the NOCTI. Again, and this is where I kind of have to stay in my lane with this because this is part of that new graduation requirements.
So the concentrator would be a what person then?
Concentrator, 480 hours in the program. And then they would, and once they reach that 40, they have to sit for the NOCTI. There is a participant status as well, which is 240 hours. And that helps delineate usually between the kids that are taking it as an elective versus taking it as part of the program. Not that we want to see a lot of elective takers. We want obviously everyone to be going through the program as best as they can.
Right.
Jared, with the NOCTI done in the junior year, you can only take one NOCTI. And this is why ag programs have issues with this when they send, or when students decide they want to go to welding programs or automotive programs or anything like that. It's because they're technically in your program, but then they leave your program and now are in another program. So they cannot be given two NOCTIs, and it can only be given, their senior year.
Yeah, so let me bounce off that a little bit. I'm gonna go with some suggestions that were had years ago. We had this visit at a PWE conference down in Mannheim a few years back, and Carol Fay and Cyber didn't lead that conversation, but I was involved with that conversation as well. We started talking about the importance of pre-test NOCTIs, right? So the state of Pennsylvania, PD will pay for one pre-test NOCTI for every kid, right? For sure. And that is a definite thing that you want to get involved with as a teacher. That gives you a really good look because as educators, we're kind of looking at the task list and looking at the task grids, program of studies, and to a point, because we never see the test itself, shooting in the dark a little bit. I want to say it that way. So I kind of compare it to the Envirothon a little bit because we never get to see the test Envirothon full-fledged. We get a little snapshot of what does that test look like, but you never get a chance to actually study it for hours. So you're just kind of there looking at it and going, okay, well, this is kind of the same deal. So you really got to drill the kids a little bit on what did that pretest NOCTI look like? Like what were some of the questions that were in that pretest NOCTI when they actually get done? So with Central Columbia, we have a lot of data days that we use mainly for elementary school. But we have data days. We have one coming up actually next Thursday as an in-service for us. And we're using it to draw information about all of our testing, keystone exams, PSSAs, whatever it may be, AP test, but also in the NOCTI. So if you have never given a pre-test yet in the NOCTI, I highly, highly encourage it. These kids and particularly don't enjoy it up front. But remember, it's only the written part. There's no practical part in the pre-test. But then after they take it, they're like, oh, I see why we did that, right? And they get better at it. It's just like taking these college entrance exams, the old SATs and things of those sorts. The more times you take it, the better you get. Same deal. At Central Columbia, we actually take it twice. It's a cost of doing business, so we pay for the second one. And we find out that kids actually do a lot better and they have a better understanding. They're much more comfortable with the NOCTI exam when they actually have to do it the end of that senior year. And we've had nothing but great results from it. So I highly encourage folks, if you've not taken that leap of faith yet for the pre-test NOCTIs, absolutely do it. I don't know if anybody else had anything to say about that, but I know that's our experiences and it's been great to be able to do that. So we kind of go from there. So,
and if you want to do, and if you want to go through and do the pre-NOCTIs, it's the same process as getting the NOCTI itself. I believe you're working through Lori Bell. Is that correct?
Yeah,
to get
at Allegheny.
At Allegheny.
Yeah, Penn State Allegheny. Yep.
So.
Yep. She does all that work for you. So your CATS and PIMS coordinator has to get that around for you. And you got to find out who that is. Some of you guys are on here today. That's you. You're the person that can do that. So that's for sure. But it definitely what that's, as we go along. So yeah, so Jared, yeah, it's only a junior thing. So be real cautious with that. If the kid's graduating early, he's graduating as a junior, then so be it. That'll be the capstone for them. We've had a couple of those kids in those situations, but if not, yeah, they get one shot at it. So hold them to their senior year, that's for sure. So, and Makara's answering the questionnaire, Chris, 240 hours per year or in total?
The 240 years, PDE defines it as 240 hours a year is considered a course. And they need 4 courses essentially to be working their way through the completer stuff. So they do want to see the 240 for ag. We like just seeing that 480 over the course of their time. Although they will say 240 is considered the course there. So it's one of, again, those gray zones, but 240 is considered one course per year at that point.
Can I ask, is there a reason that, yeah, it can't go over, can it go over 4 years period, or does that be junior, senior year? I guess I'm a little confused there.
So it can be a 4-year program if that's what you're asking, Tom. Or are you saying could it be a 5-year program?
Well, we can't, we're down to being a 2-year program supposedly. Even though
Okay.
we get those hours over 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So, and the thing that what we've been seeing is you can do it over the 2 years, but it's for 2 years, you need to have 720 hours. For a 4-year program, you need to be able to show 1,320 hours of courses that go into that. So that's where the differences come into it. If you do a 1-year program, it's still 720. If it's a 3-year program, it's 1080. They want to see that you have that amount of time available depending on how many years your program is.
So when they take the academic courses out, that's where we have the problem, because we obviously can't do that over that time frame with the teaching staff we have. I know that already.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, like I said, I'm working on some questions for that to get some clarification for you guys. So
Because I can do those technical hours easily in 3 or 4 years, but for a 2-year program, that's
Yeah.
not that way then.
Right. And that goes back to 2007 when, like I said, when Kurt sat in and went to Harrisburg and sat in those meetings and stood and represented the Ag Teachers Association on those factors and the importance of why we're doing what we're doing and the relationship there. And especially with career pathways now, how all these courses just blend together. The old days of, hey, I'm college prep, career prep, they're gone. And some times, and we don't at PDE, they don't think outside that box a little bit. Still, I mean, Chris is doing that because he's, has thought outside that box, but sometimes some folks don't, or sometimes you talk about a retired teacher, they were stuck in that college career prep mode and like, I don't get these hour thing. So that's one of the battles that we battled years ago, and hopefully, we can work our way through that. So we talk about facilities. Let's jump to facilities for a minute, because that's always a concern I get. I've had lots of younger teachers ask me, man, how do we get our facility up to speed? Like, how do we do that? Chris started today's presentation with the engine block sitting in the corner. Well, hey, we were just working on that yesterday, but we really haven't touched it in a year, right? Try to clean up your items, right? I'm not saying you have to go to the point of labeling, your items there, but it is something that's very simple to do. It just takes elbow grease to do it. And if it's one of those factors where you have to ask your administrator for some time to be able to do that, just do it, because it's going to involve everybody's process to go do that, right? My facility, our facilities, Christy and my facility is open for anybody to come visit and see what we've done. This was our last visit when Chris was not on board yet. So we got numerous accommodations for what our facility was. For some of you folks that have visited with us, it's one of those things of making sure those fire extinguishers are up to date, making sure that those fire extinguishers have the 3x3 pad with red tape on the floor around them. Make sure we have the brooms hung up on the wall effectively. Make sure we have safety glasses that are in a container. Make sure that all the machines have safety zones, guards are in place. What is your certification process? You know, we're using Safety First now with Jonathan Grimes down in Virginia, does a great job. So it's a video versus and a test, not just, hey, by the way, and we instruct. Are there a way for us to lock up usable goods like gasoline and stains and paints, and are they separated? Are they identified with a yellow container cabinet? Things like that is what we're looking for, is what they're looking for. Is wood safely stacked on a pile, not just thrown in a shop and people trip over it? Or do we have drop cords versus extension cords? And everybody's stuck for space. I get it. I have a brand new facility. I'm that same way. You just fill things up. You know, Chris started a conversation with, you know, I don't say hoarders, but you keep things because you're frugal in what you do because your budgets are tight. That's what you do, right? Back in the day when you didn't have a whole lot and you didn't have a lot of grant opportunities, when you got it, you hung on to it. It's pretty simple as you go. And unfortunately, I'm a living example of that. You guys know I had a dad that taught for 43 years and came out of the 60s, and they had no money at that point. So I guess I learned that process, but I'm kind of growing out of it after 32 years. So we're getting there, but it's one of the things that you fight through, but it's important that you don't have items on top of a cabinet, right? That's going to be one of the things that they look at. Is the cabinet safe? Is it going to lean over and, you know, hit somebody? Are our doors lockable to get to those points? So it's just one of those factors that comes into play as you look through each of these programs. So that's something that's very simple, but it's very time consuming to make right. So Chris, I don't know if you want to talk any more about facilities from your side, but it's one of those ones that gets a lot of people hung up. The curriculum is a curriculum, and most people kind of work their way through that. And we're going to get back to the OAC, LAC, but a lot of times it's the facilities that cause the issue and not getting approved and going back and have to, you know, rework the wheel or rework the revisions. What's your take on that?
Yeah, and you hit a lot of things 100% on there. And I'll provide a sheet to you guys as well. I'll send it out to Beth to send out. One of our in-house people has developed a safety checkoff list to help with schools to be able to go through that and show you what we're actually looking for evaluations. But you're 100% on that. And I know, again, as you had mentioned, this is a point of leverage too. If you're looking for storage, you know, things like that, this is a way that you can approach your schools with that. What we do is we just see what it is and we provide the data with it, and we can only go so much with that. But you know, how you guys utilize that is up to you in the long run. Other safety things that we see lately has been, you know, safety buttons not easily accessible. You talked about the 3x3 pad in front of fire extinguishers. You know, we want to see something similar like that in front of all the safety buttons. You don't have to reach over equipment or anything like that to get to it. MSDS sheets, or SDS sheets they're called now, need to be easily accessible. Schools have started moving to electronic ones. We would like to see them still printed out and put above the eye wash station or close to the eye wash station. Eye wash stations is another one that if you have it hooked up into the plumbing of the school, whether it's on one of your sinks or you have an actual station for it, you know, make sure you guys clean those out. Just let it run for a minute once a month, you know, or every other week, just let it run just to clean out the lines a little bit. If you have the bottles, surprisingly enough, those expire, even though it's usually just a saline solution. So you want to make sure that they're not expired as well. But yeah, safety is the one thing that, and I understand it because from being in the classroom as well, that is your space. That's where you personally are working with every day. And it's not that we're trying to be personal. And when we find the safety stuff, some teachers do take it very personally, say, you have a lot of stuff on top of that file cabinet that needs to be addressed at some point. Well, I need all that. That's my stuff. That's this is it. We're not trying to do that for you. And we're not trying to insult you personally on it. It's just something that is something that we see as a potential hazard. So
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna call out a couple of folks that are on with us today. One of these guys I've spent a lot of time with through the mentor mentee program. Bethany and I, well, Bethany matched us up years ago, 2020 actually. And I see him smiling right now, so that's good. So Brandon Whitmer works into a program that's brand new at Otto Eldred, no idea, and continues to contact me almost weekly about different things. And love talking to Brandon. But he can refer to a little bit from the side of start a new program, didn't have a lot of space. What do I do with it? How do I go? So Brandon, I don't know if you want to direct that towards some of the folks that are, I don't want to call you out, but some of the things that you've done from a new teacher side to a brand new program to a school that never had an ag program before. How do you do it? And what did you do that made it effective?
Wow, I'm trying to be thrown on the spot here.
Yeah, a little impromptu speech for you.
I don't know exactly what you just said. I reached out for help because I didn't know. I didn't know what I needed to do, and I'm not even claiming I still know what I needed to do. I was talking to Chris back whenever we were in Vegas together that we need to find time that some people that have that experience with the 339 need to come visit, so that what I think that we're doing is right is actually what we're supposed to be doing, not what I think is doing, and we're doing the complete opposite. But I don't know, it's just getting everyone on board, what you've been saying, getting administration on board. And with a new program, like we're the only approved program in the school, so no one knows because the CTC does everything with that. So Chris and I were talking again in Las Vegas that we were trying to make sure that we reported our numbers so that we got funding, because we've never done that before, and just all those little details. So it's not a 1 or 2 person effort, it's a group effort.
That's definitely right. And the money that you receive is a team effort. There's no question about it. We sell to our kids, and I know one of the comments that Mike Schultz has up here is about the career objective form. It all starts with that. When does that get done? Everybody does a little differently. At Central Columbia, day 2 of school, here we go. Day 2 of school is usually a Friday for us. And what do? We take the kids and we work our way through the ag program, and our engineering guys do the same thing. And we fill those career objective forms out, get them signed, send them home over the weekend, get them signed by the parents. And then, we finish them up at school. But those career objective forms get us started, but also it's a team effort. And people have to understand that, boy, this evaluation is kind of a bear, but you like the dollars on the other side, right? Jared's on here, but he wasn't in Mifflinburg at the time when this whole evaluation process came out. Mifflinburg is in our region was the very first school that said, nope, we're not doing it. We're opting out. We're out of this thing. We're not doing it. We're going to support this from the taxpayer dollar right from the scene. And Jared wasn't there at the time. I believe he was at Huntington at the time, but they came back to it because they saw the importance of those dollar values to keep a program moving forward into the future in the 21st century. So don't give up the ship on it, because it is kind of important when it goes to those career objective forms and all those factors come into play. So yeah, so if we can go back, Kristen, and jump on Mike Schultz's question here. He's got a question there related to, does a career objective form need to be ag related to qualify, or is it just the hours that are based on it?
So, and that's a question that does come up a lot. If they are not an ag, I look at it this way: if they are not having a career objective for agriculture, is this the program for them at that time? And it very well still may be, depending on what it is, but I think that's a question that needs to come up. Yes, we want to see the kids that are in the program are looking to be in agriculture for sure, or at least ag adjacent. And that, includes medical and transportation, things like that. But we do want to see that it is more aligned to what you're going to be doing in the class and what your SIP code is essentially. And then obviously what used to be high priority occupations, it's aligning to those. It's no longer high priority occupations. I forget the name off the top of my head, but yeah, that's what you do want to see that. To your other question here, senior year, as long as they have 3.5 credits. So as long as they're reaching that 480 hours, they need to have the NOCTI, yes. And if that equals 3.5 for you guys at the 140-hour credit, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that Chris touched on, and that's why I had Bethany leave this up here for a minute. One of the things you have to do, and this is in the PowerPoint, and this will be in the repository, or she'll email it out as well. But 1.2 here, and with the new evaluation, that might not match up exactly, but you want to look at providing Chris and the team 2 students through their entire 4 years, their transcript, their career objective form, where they're going to go. And that's on you as the teacher. You know, you get to pull a really good kid, or, you know, really good kids that have everything in line, and you're in control of that. They're not going to dig deep into your whole entire program of 150 kids or whatever it is, but pull 2 students for their entire 4 years. So our last evaluation, some of you guys know this individual I'm going to bring up, is one of the students I had at the time, and I pulled her items all the way through, was Abby Yoder. You know, former state FA officer, you know, all that. So what a good kid heading into ag education. She's going to get there, I think, here eventually. But long of it is, we pulled her all the way from 9th grade all the way through. That's something you can control. So the things that you can control as a teacher, make sure you do. Like the stuff that you deal with special ed or guidance, sometimes that isn't something you can control, but this is something you can control. So that's very important.
Yeah, and to build off of Doug's stuff there too, yeah, we do. If we don't have permanent records for those students provided to us, we just ask for student records, and we'll go to guidance and say, pull 2 permanent records out. And we want to see that full sequence. There's a couple other details in there that we're looking for as well. Not just those transcript schedules, but we are looking for, you know, a completed task grid to be in there as well. We are looking for the program objective forms to show, yeah, they are part of the program, and that they are looking, back to your question, Mike, yeah, they are looking at an agriculture-based industry. You know, are you going through, and is there going to be a course or a pathway to post-secondary?
Yeah, we know that the kids can change. Obviously, the kids can change their attitude and their mindset throughout the item. That's for sure. And I think PD is open to that. We don't want to extinguish a kid during 9th grade and say, oh, by the way, Bethany Matthey didn't put down something ag related, so you're going to kick her out of the program. I'm not sure that's a good thing, especially when you're in a career pathways school where you're trying to find out where this kid wants to go. No direction from home. Could be a first-time kid in the family, might be going to post-secondary school. I mean, we still have a lot of those kids. So the aspect of that is that in a career pathway school like ours, that 9th grade year is exactly what it is. It's kind of exploratory. So at the end of that 9th grade year, they're going to identify that pathway. And that's real important, beginning that 10th grade year, that they kind of are ag related. That's for sure, as you go through it. So again, you're going to be able to pull those kids as you go through it. That's for sure. So Jeremy's got another question here. Chris.
I've taken 3 years, but not taking the course of senior year. I'll look into this, Jeremy, just to make sure I'm giving you the correct answer, because that one I don't know 100%. I know once it reaches 480, but I don't know if they're not taking the senior year course, or they're considered still in the program at that time when they would be taking it. But I will get clarification for you on that.
And I know I've had a lot of questions over the last week or so. Didn't have so much early, but the last week, as we were getting ready for this thing today, about SAEs. And Chris talked about that. Remember, SAEs cannot be part of can be part of the class, but not going to be part of a credit for you as a time frame if you list it as part of that day. So at Central Columbia, we listed as period 9, which is outside the school day. Bona fide programs in an SAE in that supervised ag experience. Remember, when PD visits, they also may pull these kids for an interview. So the key to it is when they pull an Abby Yoder and say, okay, Abby, tell us a little about your SAE, tell us a little about your experiences for 4 years. You may, as a teacher, might want to pull that kid and prep that kid just a little bit on what they're going to kind of ask and what they could expect to be a question about. And again, they're not going to be able to answer all those questions, that's for sure. But the idea behind it is that you're providing PD a student that is pretty knowledgeable about your program. So if you had a kid come in within 1 year, they may not know about that. So pull that kid that's been with you for 4 years, and use them as the example, right? Chris, I don't know if you want to say anything about that as well.
No, you're 100% on it. The SAE is our way of being able to make up some of that time. And a lot of programs have gone to utilizing it as an external course. The other thing that's nice about that is they're taking it in conjunction with an ag course in class. So they're still, while kind of working on their book, maybe in class, updating it, things like that, working with the instructor to make sure everything's in line. They're actually doing the bulk of it still outside of the school. So,
Right.
yeah,
And
that's all.
those transcripts that the kids graduate with need to have SAE on the transcript. Right. And however you're going to do it, we do pass or fail at our place. But I mean, if you're grading them right out with a percentage or 4.0 scale, whatever you're using, those SAEs need to be on that transcript. That's for sure. So as we go along, the other thing in PDE you need to be aware of, if you're not aware of it, one thing when they do the evaluation, they're looking for grants. What have you done as a teacher to bonify yourself and looking for different grants that are out there, either through the National FFA, to Pennsylvania FFA Foundation, learning to do grants, supplemental grants from PDE. What have you done to help the local taxpayer and the administration move this program forward? I'm not sure. I'll ask Chris, is there a set number of grants? Is it one per year? Is it once every 4 years? Are you just looking, have we done anything active? Remember, you have no control if you're going to get accepted into that or not, right? I can fill out an application, but I never get a grant. But at least you're trying to show that you're trying to. Chris, you want to refer to that a little bit? That's some questions I got over the last week or so.
Yeah, and we do want to see it because that also shows that you're working with your community, because you have to have your OAC approve a lot of those grants, especially the supplemental grant, and look at the equipment and say, yeah, we definitely need this piece of equipment, you know, there. So it helps bring that kind of that convergence of your community in with the industry and getting everyone on the same page with it. We're not necessarily looking, Doug, for everybody for a set number. We just want to see that you guys are attempting to. We want to see that you guys are trying to provide for your students and make sure everything is as up to snuff as it can be. And shameless plug here with that, you know, the supplemental equipment grant is one of the easiest grants for every school to fill out. I think it's 1 page. You include the minutes of the meeting of your OAC that says, yep, we need this piece of equipment. And then you have your PO or your quote for the piece of equipment as well on it. And you're almost guaranteed to get some money with that as long as everything's in line. And that grant is actually it's dependent on the number of people that apply for it. So I believe this year the number was, if everyone applied, $5,000, right in that area, if every school applied for it. A couple years back when I was in the classroom, we applied for $4,000 to get some ultrasound machines. They came back and said, yep, you're getting 12 grand. And as long as you spend your quoted amount of money on it, you get it. I mean, it's not a hard one to do.
Right.
So.
You know, the from PDA, you know, Department of Ag, through with direct grants and things with the folks over there, with Morgan Sheffield and those folks, you know, those are out there as well. So we touch on those are great aspects to it. Before we end up here with this hour, the OAC LAC it was a little concerning for me. Beginning of the year, I had some younger teachers call me and said, hey, I'm really not excited about this OAC LAC meeting I'm going to have tonight. I really am fretting it. I really don't like the people that are on it.
Mhm.
I really don't like the challenges they're giving me. And they're not supportive of the program. And a lot of these people were new teachers that were coming into an old regime. I'll say it that way. We've all done it at some point in time. 32 years ago, I did that with Carl Everett. And you got to be your own person to a point. But when you get a chance to, I want to say, select those people that are on that committee, make those people understand your program, open the door for them and make it very palatable for them to come in at any point in time within school reason to assist you. I'll give you an example. I had one of our council members really into harvesting of venison. And he's also a school board member. So you have to have a school board member on your OAC. So it's like, this is great. So I had this individual come in with us last year, and he's very supportive of the program. So that's not what my situation, but I'm telling you is get them involved in the classroom. Like, and if you can, have them come in for a day and actually work with these kids and have open their eyes up to what you do every day, which is not easy. They think it is, but it's not, right? And how challenging that situation could be, and open that door up for them. You want to make sure that your OAC members are for you, not against you. And to a point, you have an opportunity to select those people. So make sure you get a good background on those folks before you end up, jumping in and saying, yep, that's the person I want. So Chris, I don't know.
Kind of build on that too. One of the other things that we always see is, there's really three types of OACs. You have or programs, and it kind of relates to their OACs. You have the OACs that just don't do anything, that just listen and shake their head. And those programs are usually successful because the teacher's really, really working hard. You have the programs that are successful on the other end of it, where your OACs are extremely active. And obviously the teachers are usually a lot more refreshed in those situations because they're not putting it all on themselves. So those two are kind of the extremes with it. One thing that we see with OACs as well is kind of a dying OAC. And that's an OAC where you're not putting them to work, or you're not getting their input, or you're just kind of saying, hey, what do you think? And then you're not giving them something to do. And those OACs end real quick because they're not feeling like they're involved in the process. And that's the biggest thing. Making sure they're involved with the process is by far one of the most beneficial things. What you put into that OAC and getting them involved pays off tenfold. And you might not see it the first year, but the second year when someone pulls up with a trailer from drops from the welding shop, 1/4-inch plate, yeah, that's awesome. That right there paid for itself.
Yeah, remember those OACs got to have somebody from a university aspect represented to it. Somebody making sure if you have your CIP code, there's folks within that CIP code on your Ag Advisory Council. Make sure that you have your school board member representative. Also, make sure you have a student representative on that as well. That's a chapter officer responsibility for us. We doubt that with our chapter president. That's who our representative is. When you take that officeship or get elected to that officeship, you're gonna have to attend these meetings. It's pretty simple. And that can be a little scary for a student, but it is what it is. But so make sure that you diversify your OAC as well, male, female, young, old. Get a good collage of people on that, so you can move that program forward. So we kind of go from there. Bethany, I know we're up for time, but
you can keep going. There's another question in the chat there from Brandon. I didn't want to interrupt you guys. I just want everybody to know that we were going to keep recording, and if they needed to leave, it would be available later. So lots of good stuff coming out of this.
Yeah, so SAE credits during the school day, you can have that happening within the school day. In order to make hours, you usually will need to have that external course, though. That's the only thing. If they're working on it during the day, as long as it's not the focus of the course, then that's fine. But my recommendation is always to have it as a separate course and have them be doing stuff outside. And don't forget, SAE is not just the time that they're journaling, but it's also times like leadership development, and doing research on their career pathways, resume building, all that other stuff as well can kind of fit into there.
So what you're saying, Chris, is if they had a leadership class and they involved community involvement or,
Mhm.
student development with resumes and things, but one time was spent on SAEs and they spent a period or two doing SAE stuff on there, that'd be acceptable.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, we're not going through it with a fine tooth comb. We're not trying to say, yeah, this is all area 100% here, because we all know that ag is all three of those rings, and that all is encompassed within a community. And we understand that. We look at it more from the community aspect there, but we do want to see all of them.
Yeah, Nicole's got a good question here. I knew she'd been up in that situation. A student doesn't have SAE hours in the scope and sequence, don't pull that student for that audit. Yeah, you want to make sure you have a student that understands the program. Now, Nicole's new at Millville, year 3 or so here. So still trying to get there, kind of get the feet up underneath her yet. She's right here in our county. Another one of our mentor-mentee success stories. So, but yeah, you want to make sure you pull that kid for that audit and that understands the total program. And you have a couple kids up there, Nicole, that'll be able to do that for you. That's for sure. So. So yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of information that we kind of pushed out there today. Again, in the repository or in an email that Bethany's going to send out, there are going to be lots of information. My door, email, phone calls, always available. I try to respond to these things on a day-to-day basis. So, if I don't get back to you right away, I will. But usually I try to do it that same day or that night. If you have questions about your visit or about what's coming up, Chris has done a great job. His door is always open. Filled that Chris Weller position, and we're glad he did. It was left open there for a while, and we were kind of left with no representation there. So we're glad he's on board. And I'm not going to speak for him, but I think his door is open for
Yeah,
questions.
my door's open as well. I was priding myself earlier this month with being able to get back to things on a daily basis. That is not the case as of right now with reapproval. So I apologize to anyone, and not to mention being out for conferences and stuff too. But I will get to you as well. I'm happy to come out to your schools if you'd like me to come out and visit sometime. One thing that we're working on right now is if you guys wish to continue this conversation, we actually, last year, or this last ILC, Beth and John both helped out with a strand that we put together at PDE to kind of help administrators understand the ideas and the nuances behind some of the stuff in CTCs. I'm looking to kind of continue that over the next couple of years with little adjustments, so you can get your administrators involved with it. The other thing that I'm hoping goes through is with PAAE. I've put in for a proposal for decoding 339, kind of a continuation of this. I'm also hoping to roll out a workbook for you guys at that type as well, meaning that it's going to have minute templates for LAC meetings, as in what needs to be discussed, what needs to be voted for your OAC meetings, potential frameworks for courses, potential class outlines, task grid stuff, all this stuff that we kind of are talking about. That's hard for all of us to kind of get all in one place at one time. I'm trying to get that there. And according with that is build off of what Doug says as well. You guys are not responsible for all of this. In a PDE, we are firm believers in that. So on that workbook, we'll be dividing up all these 1.1s and all the way up through 24 into who's most fit to be responsible to get that information. So when you have an administrator that's coming in that has no idea, you can say, well, hey, this is the stuff that PDE says you may be more likely to be able to do, or that you should be really focusing on. Is it gonna be ag specific? I do not have any other ones coming out for anything else. Some of the stuff will be generic enough that could be used for other programs. But there will be some things for ag specific, like SAE, since we are so unique with that. That'll be something that's covered in there as well.
Yeah, that's a great example. That's a great idea because we've never been given the opportunity to give me an example of what that looks like and let me fit it to my mold. So like minutes for an ag advisory council meeting, or what does a support letter, because you need two letters from your OAC members for every CIP code. So what does that letter look like? And some of our OEC folks may not be great writers as an adult. So what can we do to make a, I don't want to say a cookie cutter model, but what can we do as a model? They're out there because Chris is giving them. What does that look like? So we can just kind of forward that to them and let them fill in the spaces and then kind of go from there, right? So that's one of the things that's also come up, Jeremy or Chris has said this, people going to go down to Jeremy and say, oh, by the way, Jeremy, you're responsible for everything that we're going to do on this visit. Good luck, right? That's what they'll do to you. I had that the very first time. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not involved in special ed. I'm not directly. It's not my job every day. My job is what I have to do. So you guys got to help out there a little bit. So the quicker you can get, like I said at the beginning, guidance and special ed and administration. There's an administrative section. Like they have to get their certificates uploaded. They have to get, when's the last time they got their certification? Things like that. What's their professional development look like? Are they ongoing professional development? I don't know what the administrators all do. I know what they're doing, but I don't know the last time they did all that. They don't follow my Act 48 hours, right? I'm not following theirs. So that's important too. The other one I guess I'll leave with is certifications. Provide your students with as many certifications as you can. One of the things we've done at Central Columbia is we've tried to make sure that we have a certification for every grade level through the 4 years. That was something that was a revision that we did. We finally solidified that and we're good now. But it took a little bit to do that. But if you can do that, that'd be great. That's something that PD is looking at. So,
Yeah, and shameless plug here again. I'm sorry we keep going on and keep building off things. SAE, since that's a hot topic as well. If you guys get into the AET at any point, I'd love to have some of your guys' feedback and information on the ACRES application that's on there now. It's a soft skills application that's free for any of the AET users. But if anyone's adventurous and wants to do that, it's ACRS. And it's calculation of 250 hours, and they do provide a certificate for it, but we're looking to see if we can bring it to Pennsylvania. We'd obviously have to get that certificate Pennsylvania specific, but if you guys are feeling froggy, not to add more on your list, please go ahead and check that out.
well, Bethany, we could probably go on for a while, but we'll stop it there, I guess. But
Yeah, I'm
lots
gonna
of
stop
stuff.
the share here.
It's good stuff. Don't be afraid. I talk to younger folks. Don't be afraid with it. Use this to promote your program. Use it to get items, equipment, upgrade your facilities. You knew you could do it, but nobody will let you do it. Let PD be the bad guy to your administrators and say, by the way, they said so, and they're running the state, so we have to do it. So we've done that at our place. But it also helps when your superintendent's on the Ag Ed Commission. I guess that helps me a little bit, but you got it there. But yeah.
So I'm just making sure we got everybody's question on the chat on here. We had a couple there at the last minute or so, but I think we're good.
Can I just add one more thing? Doug?
Sure.
And it really helps over the years to get non-resident tuition students into the program too. And that's actually a good amount of money for the district as well. So your superintendent and also board members really appreciate that.
Yeah, when you get those transfer students coming in from other schools, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You had a young lady, spoke the creed there for us here for the state, and we worked with her. I had the opportunity to work with her directly. So, yeah, you want to get those kids involved. At our place, we have 61 of those kids coming into Central Columbia. So there's a leverage there too. You're right, Jeremy.
Right.
Yep.
And from the PDE perspective, all we need to make sure you guys have then is an admissions policy, non-discriminatory admissions policy, and that's where we stand on the transfer students.
Yeah, that's an application process, right, Chris? They're all different, but have an application, fill it out, have them go through an evaluation. They go through a tour, but they just keep doing their thing. So, yep.
Exactly.
All righty. Well, if there's no more questions, I'm gonna stop the recording. Last call for questions. All righty. Well, thank you guys for joining us.